American Redditors, what was the biggest culture shock when you visited Europe? Visiting Amsterdam, I was shocked to see so many people riding bikes. I've never seen that many bicycles in my life. A lady in a shop told me, in Amsterdam, if you yell out, "Hey, that's my bike," 6 out of 10 people will drop their bikes and run. Apparently, bike theft is the biggest crime issue over there. The pace is much slower. The people were very friendly and extremely interested in our presidential election. This was in late 2007. I didn't see a single fat person, and I saw a Heineken commercial with completely naked men on primetime television. Loved it there. How much walking I did. Not because I needed to, but because it was easier. That's one of my bigger culture shocks when visiting the US. Everything is so far away, you need a car just to do anything. Well, at least in the West. Brit living in Texas here can confirm. I successfully walked to Starbucks once. It took me 3 hours all in all. I arrived at the Charles de Gaulle airport to meet a friend of a friend who was picking me up, and I was staying with his family for 3 weeks. I'm a straight man in my 20s, and he is a married straight man in his 40s with 3 kids. We had been corresponding online and on the phone for a few months leading up to my trip. I was grateful for everything he was doing for me and already viewed him as somewhat as a father figure. My French dad, I called him. He gave me 2 big kisses on the cheek. I was a little weirded out by this, but knew it was part of their culture and was happy for it. I went to give him a hug to show I was happy to see him. He flipped out. He was trying to play it cool, but for 2 men to hug is totally weird and only sexual couples do it according to him. It was a great trip though. As a teenage Texan boy who visited Germany in high school, I'd say the biggest shock was the billboard at the end of our street with a topless woman on it. I looked at that thing so much I still have it memorized 20 years later. My family moved from Texas to Germany when I was in 8th grade. I went for a bike ride by myself and was so startled to see naked men in the park by the river that I crashed my bike. My dad had to come pick me up and still teases me about it to this day. How slowed down everything is. When you go to a cafe, there's usually no to-go coffee. You're expected to sit down or stand at the bar and drink your coffee slowly. Out to dinner, meals last hours and start way later than they do here. We would always stand out as the fast-moving Americans on our way to class. When Starbucks first opened in France, it didn't work. Not much success. They reopened with a setup made for drinking there, not to go. With much more room, seats, and couches, corners to isolate and talk. It works very well now. For me, the biggest shock was how eerily similar most things were. For example, TV ads in the UK. Pretty much the same, except not. It felt like everything was just a little different. Enough to where you didn't consciously notice it all the time, but it made things just seem odd at times. Also, meat is effing expensive in Europe. Just sliced turkey and shit was way out of my budget when I went to France. I just ended up eating baguettes with cheese and wine because it was the cheapest option available. No real complaints on that though. When I went from the UK to US, the one thing I noticed a big difference in was your TV ads. Medicine at, retraction of a previous medicine ad. It seemed to be nothing but adverts for pills. I realized how many freebies we get in the US. Free refills, as much ketchup as you want in fast food places, free toilets, etc. In Europe, you have to pay for everything. I got used to it. I remember my first time I went to Europe, Poland, and had to take a crap and didn't have any money on me. That sucked. Also, I remember while out drinking, a fellow traveler asked me for money because she was about to piss her pants. Amateurs. That's when you find a back alley and a friend to guard you. Doner kebab will rock your world. The jacked MPs with machine guns guarding the train station in Paris. As a British person, I'm picturing armed members of parliament. That would make Prime Minister's questions a whole lot more interesting. The fact that I could easily walk everywhere I needed to go within a town in Germany. Germany's transportation system blew me away. The U-Bahn for traveling within the city, the S-Bahn for getting out to the burbs, and the train for getting to faraway cities. I was able to get anywhere I wanted to go without a car. It was also impressive to see how much more pedestrian friendly most places were, since they didn't need so many massive roads and parking lots all over the place. Coming from California, where you can't survive without a car, it was inspiring to see how public transportation could be made so efficient and accessible. I've backpacked Europe 3 times now. I'd say the biggest culture shock was that not a single person struck up a conversation with me, except at the hostels. It varies by country. Czechs don't speak to strangers even when drunk, but Italians will propose marriage to strangers on the bus. In northern Italy, speaking with strangers is really rare, especially in the major cities, while in the minor ones and towns it's at least more common. Remnants of the 2 world wars are everywhere. You can actually see lines across many of the buildings where they use new brick and mortar to rebuild after Hitler blitzkrieged them to shit. Many of the towns I visited in Germany and Czech Republic still had anti-tank hedgehogs sticking out all around the borders or along main roads. The locals said they figured it was more of a pain to dig them all out, so they just left them as a daily reminder of the cost of war. Fascinating to me. Also, paying for public toilets in Czech Republic, Austria, and Hungary. Had to toss the attendant a few shillings to pee in a hole in the ground. The smoking. People smoking everywhere. Restaurants, street corners, cafes. When I landed in Vienna, there was a 10x5 meter plexiglass box in the airport where 7 Austrians chain smoked while waiting for their luggage. Only in some places. Various countries, including the Netherlands, ban smoking in public places, etc. Those that still smoke really cluster together, around entrances, in special smoking sections, etc. It surprised me when the people of England always referred to Europe as if they weren't a part of it. I was talking to a girl in the Royal Navy and I asked her if she liked something that I can't recall. She said, "No, that's way too European. We Brits like to think we're very different from mainland Europeans. The language barrier and the 21-mile body of water that separates us probably contributes to that. Many more Europeans would describe themselves as European, whereas most Brits will say they are Brits, or English or Scottish, then I guess probably also European, technically." The education system, particularly at the university level. I studied abroad in the south of France for a year during my undergrad. I was placed into the 4th level of an actual French institute, instead of going through an American immersion program. Basically, at the start of each semester, they give you a big long list of classes, and the only requirement is that you take 4 exams at the end. Meaning, there is no enrollment, no set schedule, nothing like that. You can show up to whatever classes you wanted, whenever you wanted, so long as you took a certain amount of finals at the end, which, by the way, were oral. I really couldn't believe the autonomy afforded to university students. Coming from the US, where class enrollment is highly regulated. Nudity. As an American, I'm used to, but don't agree with, nudity being bad. In Europe, this isn't the case at all. First night in the hotel, flipping channels at about 9 p.m. News, music video, random show, news, hardcore porn, cartoons, news. It was just like, okay then, glad the kid's in the other room, because that might have been difficult to explain. At the store, big display of wall calendars. Hello Kitty, puppies, castles, totally naked models, male and female, quaint villages, asterisks. Right there on a turn rack next to the children's books and obviously not placed there by accident. I have neighbors who stand in front of their windows naked, no shame. It's just how it is, especially with smaller apartments built practically on top of one another. I don't care, but the first time I saw my neighbor brushing her teeth while topless, it was quite a not in Kansas anymore feeling. Also, Germans really like to hang out their windows and stare at people. Old lady across the street does it daily, as does an older man in the house behind mine. Every day, they just open the windows and watch the world go by. If you look at them, they just stare back, like they are daring you to have a problem with their verism. I caught one neighbor watching me the other day. I was just petting my cat in our winter garden, not a euphemism, and looked up to find someone staring at me from across the street. It was weird, but whatever. I guess I'm more entertaining than daytime television. The French are generally nice. It's Parisians who are assholes, and give the whole country that reputation. And they're not singling you out because you're American. They're assholes to each other too. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.